Hello! Welcome to part 4 of the Octopath Traveler Series for Smile Game Builder. Today we're going to be using Blender to build out some grass and tree objects and animate them for Smile Game Builder. As you can see, I've already opened up the tile set that I'm going to use today. Today I'm going to make a texture that contains all the trees and grass that I want to use and animate. So I'm going to start with a new file, and I'm going to make it 512 by 512. This should give me enough space to put what I want. Now that I have that, I'm going to delete the background. Actually, I'm going to make a new layer and then delete the background so I have a transparent background, because it's important for this tutorial that you use a transparent background. Now again, I'm using a 16 by 16 tile set. I've already made a grid in Photoshop, and if you don't know how to do that, that's under Preferences and Grids, Guides, and Slices. And right here, you can set your grid size for every 16 pixels. And that's what I've done. And if you can't see it, it's under View, Show, Grid. You would just make sure that your grid is there. You can also snap to the grid if you'd like. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this really big tree. Now, something to keep in mind is the size of your trees and grass. Now, this particular tree is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tiles tall. So I want that to be representative as far as resolution goes in Smile Game Builder. So this particular tree is going to be 6 tiles large in Blender as well. So I'll show you when I get there what I mean by that. So first I'm going to grab this tree. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it into my file here. Yeah, so I have plenty of room because I'm using a pretty small tile set. I'm going to grab the next tree that I want to use. I'm going to grab a slightly smaller tree. This one seems to be only 4 tiles tall. Paste that in here. And I'm going to continue grabbing a few other objects here. Now, I may not show you how to animate all of these because what I'm going to show you is pretty much applicable to any object that you create. Okay, so I think I'll do, that's fine. That's fine for trees. So I'm going to grab some pieces of grass as well. These are the tall slices of grass that I want to use right here. So I'm just going to move things around here. And okay, great. All right, now that everything's nice and separate, let's go ahead and save this as a new texture. So we're going to export this as a PNG. And I've already created a trees folder. So I'm going to go ahead and put this texture here. And we're going to call it trees and grass. And we'll use that for both. Okay. So now that that's created, I'm going to go ahead and go to Blender. I've already started a new file and I've saved it as trees.blend. It's just an empty file here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new object here, and it's going to be a plane. So we're going to do a Shift A on the keyboard and do plane. So I'm going to go to edit mode, hit tab, rotate on the X by 90. So now it's standing upright. And then I'm going to move it on the Z axis up a whole step here. Okay, so looking at the grid here, this plane is, looks like it's 2 by 2. In my tree, all right, so we've got 6 tall and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about 6 wide as well. So we're gonna match that in Blender. So I'm gonna make this object 6 by 6. Now, what I like to do is just scale it by half, which is hit S and then hit 0.5. And then I'll scale it again, but hit 6 on the keyboard, and that will make it exactly 6 squares tall. Then I'm just going to move it into place, and there it is. All right, so Right now, it's just a giant square, right? Not exactly what we want for the tree, but and I'll show you exactly what we want here in a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and import the texture so that we can use it. So let's go to Materials. We'll hit New. I'm just going to call this Tree, and we're going to use Base Color, Image Texture here, and open the Trees and Grass texture. All right, so let's go to our UV Editing tab. All right, so it's already, plane's already come UV unwrapped, which is great. So what I'm going to do is switch to material mode so I can see what I got over here. I'm going to grab all of my vertices by hitting A and then scale this down until that tree fits perfectly inside this square here. All right. So right about there. Okay. All right, so our tree is standing up vertically, which is good. So I'm going to teach you a new shortcut. When you're in edit mode in Blender and you're in the 3D view, you can hit Control R and it's going to show you, when you move your mouse mount, you're going to see these lines right here. So when you go up to the top here you have a vertical line and here's a horizontal line. This is called a loop cut. Now we're going to divide this object into several cuts. So what you do is you scroll your mouse to add more cuts. And so I'm going to add 5 cuts. So I scrolled my wheel up and I have 5 cuts there. And I'm just going to click my mouse and it saves those cuts. Then I'm going to add 5 here, click my mouse, and there we go. We've got cuts. So what this allows us to do as well is we can select some vertices here. And what I'm going to do, or any part of the object that I don't really need, I'm going to delete. So I'm going to select some vertices. Don't need this, don't need this. And I'm going to hit X on my keyboard, delete those vertices. Oh, great, perfect. And then I'm going to do the same thing here, but first I'm going to create a joining edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this vertice, hold Shift, and grab this vertice, hit J on my keyboard, and that adds an edge. So I'm going to do the same thing here, J on the keyboard, and I'll do that here, and I'm just going to resize it on the UV editing. So I'm just going to come through here, J, and J, same thing here, J. I'm going to resize it. I'm going to resize the UV a little bit more. So, and then J, J. So basically, I can go ahead and just delete these vertices out and shape this basically perfectly to the tree. The reason why you want to do this is for animating. It'll make it a little bit more accurate. And you don't have vertices you don't need, basically. So just saves on rendering a little bit. All right, so let's fix the UV editing here. I'm going to select all of the vertices, come over here, and we're just going to reline this up a little bit. And then I'm going to just grab this and move it just a wee bit here, just so it fits in there. And that's looking pretty good. There we go. All right, perfect. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shape the tree a little bit. I'm going to shape it a little different here. So what I want to do is I'm going to move the bottom vertices here out a little bit. So what this is going to do is kind of give it the illusion when we get it into Smile Game Builder that these roots are actually kind of coming out a little bit. it doesn't do a whole lot to sell that, but it just helps it a little bit more, because what you want is for those roots to look like they're on the ground, basically. And so I'm going to grab these three and I'm going to move it out just a little bit. G, Y, just make sure I have everything evenly. There we go. I'm going to move these back. G, Y. I'm going to move that back just a little bit. All right, so that's going to give it the effect whenever we get into Smile Game Builder that it looks like that trunk is coming out a little bit. And I'm going to move this out a little bit more too. G, Y. And overall, I want this tree to have kind of a almost a leaning aspect to it, just so it catches the light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on real quick this proportional editing tool. This allows us to move a whole lot of vertices at the same time, depending on how big this circle is, proportional to this circle. So you can scroll your mouse wheel to make that circle big, smaller, or bigger. So I'm going to make it kind of around this big. And so it's one of those things you got to kind of play with and you'll figure it out. So I'm going to move it, G, Y. I'm going to lean the tree back just a hair. All right. And I'm going to do the same thing with these vertices, G, Y. I'm going to scale this down a little bit and there. All right. Yeah. So, and then I'm going to pull this out, this middle part, G, Y, out a little bit. There we go. So now we got a little bit of shape to the tree. Not a whole lot, but it's going to help sell the tree a little bit more as a flat object, because it is a flat object. Let's be honest here. Okay. So now that we got the shape that we want, I'm going to select all the vertices. I'm going to go to face and I'm going to do shade smooth. I want it to have smooth shading over the whole object here. Okay. Now, something may be bothering you. This is transparent, but it doesn't look transparent in Blender. I get it. I understand. So the way that you fix that, we'll come down to blend mode and switch it to alpha clip. Then what we're going to go to our shading, and we're going to come down here to the node editor. Now you don't have to do this, but for Smile Game Builder, but I like to do it just because when I'm working on something, I want to see it correctly in Blender. So I'm going to grab this alpha node here and I'm going to connect it to the alpha at the bottom here. And boom. Now we have our alpha looking mostly correct there, which is, good enough. So let's go back to the UV editing. I'm going to turn off proportional editing now. And so now we need to add the bones to this object. Now the bones will allow us to animate it. So first things first, we need a root bone. This root bone will basically anchor the tree to this bone, so that whenever we're animating the leaves and stuff, the bottom will not move. So let's create our first bone. We're going to hit shift. We're going to go into object mode. So make sure you're in object mode, not in edit mode. We're going to hit shift A on the keyboard and we're going to go down to armature and we're going to do single bone. All right. So now that we have a single bone here, what we're going to do now is select our bone. And I'm going to hit 3 on the keyboard just so I can see it from the side here. And I'm going to hit tab and go to edit mode. So now bones have an edit mode too. This is where you can add more bones and whatnot. Well, I'm going to come over here to this tab. I'm going to name this bone root. All right. Now, there's several ways that you can set up an animation. I'm going to do it the quickest and easiest way for you guys. I'm going to make a copy of this bone and move it higher up here somewhere and where the leaves are, and that's where we're gonna do our animation from. So we're just gonna use 2 bones. That's it. So we're gonna hit, with this bone selected in edit mode, we're gonna hit shift D. That duplicates the bone. Then I'm going to hit Z on the keyboard. And that's going to move. I can move it now up and down on the Z. I'm going to set it right in the middle of the leaves. Boom. Just like that. I'm going to move the tree. I'm going to go back to object mode. I'm going to move the tree into the middle, the roots of the tree into the middle of this bone here, just so it's just right on that bone. Then go back to object mode, go back to the bone. And I'm going to select this bone and G, Y, move it right over back to where those leaves are. Okay, perfect. All right. So now that we have that made, let's go back into object mode. Now it's very important the order of which you choose these things. Or we're going to make the bone the parent of the trees, which means that this bone is going to be able to control the tree. And so what we can do is first we got to select it and then hold shift and then select our bones. Then on the keyboard you can hit Control P and you're going to see a bunch of parent options here. Now since we have bones selected as the parent, we can set it to armature deform. What I'm going to choose is armature deform with automatic weights. This will give the tree automatic weights to these bones, and we'll see how it translated here. It's not perfect, and you'll see that once we go into weight paint mode here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is select the bone first, and then hold shift, select the tree, and we're going to switch up here from object mode to weight paint mode. Now look at this. We have this bone selected, and you see a bunch of red up here, green here, kind of fades down into blue. Well, if I choose this bone, it's be a bunch of red here, green, and then blue. So this is how the object is weighted to the bones here. So as you can see, red is where most of the weight is. Green is kind of the middle ground of the weight. So it's, this bone doesn't have much weight. You can press G to move these around and click to set it back where it was. And then same thing here. If we move this around, you can see that the weights here, if the wind was blowing, the trunk of the tree doesn't really go anywhere. You might see the middle of the tree kind of bend and sway, but you won't see the trunk move. So what we're going to do is reweight some of this. Blender's already kind of set up for you to start painting right away, and it's set to 100% strength. And in this case, we're going to use that. So for the trunk, what I'm going to do is paint in some more weight at the bottom so this trunk does not move at all. What I'm also going to do is scroll this thing over with my middle mouse scroll and come over to the options and click Auto Normalize. What this will do is when I start painting, it'll affect the weight of the other bone since they are, it kind of fades the weight between them. What I'm going to do is start painting the bottom of this trunk. And you'll see that it gets more red here. And I'm going to make this whole section here completely red. So that when I move this, none of the bottom should be moving. So it looked like it was still moving a little bit. So we'll switch to solid mode so that we can see our vertices and everything. So there we go. You can see the problem there. There was a little bit of orange on that corner there. All right. Let's go back. And there we go. Now nothing is moving. Perfect. Now, I think what I'm going to do is actually move the position of this bone up a little bit more. I want it to affect more of the top of the tree. And also what I'm going to do is link these bones together so that when I move the root bone, the whole object moves. Because it's the root. If the bottom of the object moves, the rest of it needs to move, right? So let's go back into object mode. and select the bones. We're going to go to the bone here. And what we're going to do is go to edit mode and select this top bone. We're going to go to relations, and we're going to give the parent the root. And then I'm going to rename this bone to leaves. Perfect. Now I'm going to move this this top bone up more. So GZ, I want, when I move this bone in our pose mode, I want it to move just the top of the tree. I don't want the rest of it to move, just the top of it. So let's go back into pose mode. And there we go. So there's different ways you can animate this if you want. What I'm going to do is continue to edit the weight paint a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is go back into object mode and select the bones and then the object and go into weight paint. I'm going to select this bone and then I'm going to make sure this part's red here. So this is just going to make sure that the tree goes back and forth. Now what you could do is you could put a whole bunch of bones around the side here, maybe like 3 or 4, and then like make it wiggle the leaves a little bit more, like randomly. I'm making this as simple as possible. So, you know, when you're done, feel free to explore with more bones and different weight painting, just so that you know, A, get acquainted with Blender and how it works, and then B, you know, you can get more creative with how your trees animate. So I think I'm going to go ahead and animate this tree. So let's go to our animation tab. I'm going to make sure I go to object mode, click the bones, and now I'm going to go to pose mode. And go to my material mode up here so I can see the tree as I'm animating it. So what I like to do is set a begin and ending frame to the same frame. This will allow for some smooth animation. So what are we going to do? I'm going to create a starting frame for this animation. Before I do that though, we need to set this object, this scene to 60 frames per second, because that's what Smile Game Builder runs on. Okay, so let's go to our output properties, and then we're going to click 60 down here under frame rate. And this will help us set the right frame rate. And then I'm going to set my end frame to, like, I don't know, let's go to 500. Okay. I'm going to make sure my time here is set to 1. While my mouse is in the 3D view, I'm going to hit I on the keyboard and do location, rotation, and scale. And now that's going to create a keyframe for this frame here. And then I'm going to come all the way over to, I'm going to just do it on 400. And I'm going to create another one here. And then rotation, location, rotation, and scale. Awesome, perfect. So what I'm going to do here is move it somewhere in the middle. So early on, I want it to bend this way. So I'm going to make sure I'm in front view mode, and I want it to bend this way. Hit I and do that. And then towards the end there, I want it to go this way. So, and then come back again, and then go back there. So there we go. So what you can do is set your endpoint to 400, not 40, 400. Hit spacebar to let your animation play. So there we go. It's playing between all the keyframes, and it's pretty smooth. It's subtle, but it kind of gets the point across that the tree is kind of swaying in the wind there. And that's basically it. Once you're done, you can export your object. So I'm going to save. I'm going to do an export as FBX, and I'm going to save this as tree_01. Now, what we need to do is create a definition file. Now, I've opened the folder where my tree is, and I'm going to right-click and choose New Rich Text, or Text Document, not Rich Text Document, just a regular text document. Now, if you're using Windows and you don't see the option, you don't see this .txt ending, you need to come to View, Options. This is Windows 10. And do Change Folder and Search Options. Go to View, scroll down, and uncheck the Hide Extensions for known file types. This will help you change it from a text file to a .def. So what we're going to do is do that just now. So I'm going to call this, it has to be named the same as your FBX file. So I'm going to call this tree_01.def. That's going to be named a definition file. All right. So right away, you won't be able to open this up in Notepad. So what you'll need to do is double click it. It'll give you options on which program to open it. You need to choose Notepad. And you may have to search your computer for it, but you do need to use Notepad. You can also use Notepad++, which you can download, but I'm just going to use Notepad here. Okay, so now that you've created a .definition file, we need to set the animation up. So what we're going to do is first type in ANIM. That stands for animation. And then we're going to type the name of our animation. So we're going to call this wind. And then we're going to type 1 space 400 space loop. This is basically saying this is the name of the animation. This is the starting frame. This is the ending frame. And loop tells it to loop. And that's basically it. So we're going to hit save. And then we're going to come into Smile Game Builder. And we're going to add our tree. So we're going to go to Add. Go to Maps, Objects, Add. And then we're going to add our tree. I already have one in there. That's fine. And then what we'll do is come to Objects, come to Tree, and then there it is. And there's the tree I created. And you can apply this to grass, just like that. I did the same thing to the bunches of grass, which, you know, if your grass is only 1 tile tall, then just make it 1 tile tall. If it's half a tile tall, only make it half a tile tall. And that's basically it. That's how you create grass and trees and animate them. I hope you learned something today. If you have any questions, just post them in the comments below. And happy game building!